What's good with the YouTube? Y'all already know Big Flaco represent the convict's perspective and real talk with Flaco, as well as felons to men's. Booyah.
Yes, indeedy, man. This is Gunners from Gunners Profile and Gunners Collective. You already know how I wiggle. I'm getting it in indubitably.
Hey, what's up, YouTube, man? This is your boy Rojo, Convict's Perspective, the Rojo Room, as well as our new one, Gunner and Rojo's Reaction Room. Right. Anyway, today, as you can tell by the thumbnail, man, we got a great story from an OG who was there in the flesh, present when it happened. It was a very unique time in history when the big homies from both sides, both north and south of that imaginary line in Bakersfield, worked together against a very disrespectful incident that transpired in Soledad State Prison. Flaco, you guys already know, he's the historian. He has the connection to get this good stuff, and he's going to give it to you right now.
Here's a quick disclaimer, man. All this information was provided by one individual that was present, that was also involved in this riot. So let's take it back a little bit. After the Cheyenne death, as well as the couple other killings that happened, this is all before all that. This is around 1971. After the expulsion to the NF that happened out there in September 15th, 1968, when, you know, Cricket Gallegos was killed, 17 MA associates and members were stabbed. There was a little conflict for a minute, but at this time, there was basically an agreement. Peace treaty was going on. It was consisted of all groups, and each facility operated on their own. It depended on what MEDO was there and what NF member was there. So if you notice, between 1969 to 1971, there was really no issues amongst the Raza. Everybody was pushing that Raza line. They had their different allegiances, their different groups that they were a part of, but they were able to coexist on these yards. It was no different in Soledad. They were able to sling their dope. They were able to use dope and just do as they pleased. And it was more of a Raza thing at that time era. Whether you were affiliated with the NF or MA. A lot of people don't realize that there was a time period of peace between these groups. Certain individuals felt a certain way, others didn't. Okay, so at this facility at Soledad, it happened around 1971. And I'm gonna go in shortly after about how some of the NF-MA war started to escalate a little bit after. So they were in the cafeteria, and there was a particular white individual that had a lot of racial overtones towards Mexicans. Apparently, he got into it with a rather Mexican dude that wasn't affiliated with the NF or MA. He was just doing his time. And what ended up happening was he disrespected this individual in the cafeteria and literally spit in his face. And then there was racial overtones that happened afterwards. Now, rather than them kick it off in the cafeteria, all the Mexicans decided that they were going to wait for them to come outside, because there were some words exchanged, there was a little bit of racial slurs and so forth. So as they all went outside, they went outside deep. They were prepared and ready. The whites at that time did not want to come out. They tried to stay in the cafeteria as the guards locked it up. Eventually, the guards said, you know what? We can't save your ass. You can't be up in here. Proceeded to release them. As they released them back out to the yard, the whites went out to the yard. The NF, MA, and just regular affiliated Mexicans all rushed the whites. It was a big old riot. You know, weapons were used and so forth. And basically, the NF and the MA at that time gave the whites the business. There was NF members like Danny Valdez, Bruiser. Who else was there? Fig. There was MA members, Flaco from Artesia, Joe Bo from the Avenues, and so forth. There was a lot of individuals. Even Mundo was there at that time when this incident happened. And so this was the first incident that's ever happened, and the only incident, to my knowledge, to where the NF and MA actually joined forces. But it was based upon the environment and how prison was at that time. People think that after the shoe incident that it was just all out guerra. No, it wasn't. The war started to proceed afterwards, around 1972. You know, Joe Lugo was there as well in that incident. And where it mainly started in Soledad at that time was when Joe Lugo, right? You all heard the saying, send him to Lugo's house or Lugo's pad? He was a Puerto Rican NF member. He was actually killed, they say, by the MA and AB, but he was actually killed by the Aryan Brotherhood member named Woodsy. Okay, 20 minutes later, see, this has never been ever reported to us. The NF re-attacked, and they attacked and killed Flaco from Artesia. They were supposed to try to kill two other MA members, but those two other MA members had ran. So that's when a lot of the escalation started to occur between the NF, MA, and actually AB. But previously, before that, like I said, about a year before, they were all out there interacting, kicking back, playing cards. Some of them were slamming that guy together, you know. But this is all a true story that happened at this time.
Yeah, it's a trip. You know, it's a trip to hear the history as told by someone who was actually there. Because we all get a breakdown of the history, and being a gang member, you're to learn your history. You know, that's a way to know where, you know, the foundation is set for what you're basically claiming or what your movement is that you're adhering to. Now, there was that time period. You know, there's been a couple lost time periods, you know, being that 71 to 72 era, like you're saying. And it's crazy that it's coming out now that we're able to hear this. And then, of course, you know, there's a lost era of the 80s where there wasn't too much going on. Everybody was getting slammed back. We don't hear the history of the 80s. A lot of people like to say the 80s were dangerous, but you'll hear 70s were the most dangerous time era, then the 90s. As far as gangbanging, the 80s is a lost era. But, you know, it's a trip to hear that happened with what's going on now. See, I like to speak in the here and now, and with this end of hostilities and with them basically coming together on these yards and what could be possibly implemented here in the next coming weeks. Can we see it again? Can we see people work together to form some type of an alliance? Because it's beneficial to all groups, you know, being active, non-active, things of that nature. It's just a trip to hear stories like this and to actually sit down and hear the history relive itself or be told, because there's so many jewels and gems and stories that we never got a chance to hear. That I myself, even though I'm not in that mix, no horse in the race, couldn't care either way, one way or the other. It's always a trip to sit back and hear these stories, you know, especially when they're spoken about actual factual events. Now, I have heard something similar to this story somewhere along the line, but I never got the full details like Flaco just said now. I do know, and from what I heard from an individual, this was about the time, Flaco, maybe you could reiterate it, wasn't Mundo walking away about this time?
I've heard that speculation that he wasn't involved, that he elected not to get involved at that time. The politics didn't really mandate that it was mandatory. It was a time of really peace at that time. This was just the Raza that decided upon their own free will to take action.
Okay.
So I guess he elected not to ride with Raza that day.
Yeah, well, you know.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, there was a lot of key figures on that yard at that time, man, which was kind of interesting that, you know, we've always thought that they were at each other's throats. And he said, nah, it was more about Raza just being Mexicanos, and whatever group you allied with, that's who you associated with. You know what I mean? And he said it depended on what prison they were at, like San Quentin or Folsom, wherever you were locked up, they had different emeros or different familianos that had different agendas. And see, that's where everything started to get into like little conflicts, because maybe this emero didn't like the NF or had issues with this dude from a certain neighborhood, believe it or not. You know what I'm saying? Now that dude's aligned with the NF. Now he can settle his issues with that dude because he's aligned with the NF. You know? But he said it wasn't a time era. Even when we had Bo on the show, right? He said it was all puro raza. It didn't matter if you were from San Diego all the way to Pelican Bay, he said. They all got along. They all knew each other from like YA. And you got to remember, all these groups, the NF and MA, this is prison in the 60s and 70s. These dudes were all in their 20s, bro.
Yeah, they all were in YA together.
They were all kids.
Yeah, well, what a lot of people don't understand too, and they get the misconception because of movies like American Me and other movies where they automatically put that dividing factor of North and South. There was no North and South. It was puro raza. And a lot of these guys that end up becoming NF members were actually from the same neighborhoods of guys that were emeros. You know, there was Maravillas, there was San Diego, Logan Heights. There was actually Logan Heights is a key player in this because from San Diego, because they were actually one of the only groups to have an active NF member and emero at the same time from the same neighborhood.
And Maravilla.
And Maravilla as well. Lips Valdez. Where was Lips Valdez from?
Okay, hold on. I'm getting some information to add to this right quick.
Okay.
Hey, real quick while Flaco's
doing
the white
boy. Okay, check this out. The guy named that the white boy that spit on the Mexican guy's name was Fast from Compton. He later became an NF member. So the Mexican dude that actually got spit on by the white dude was an individual named Fast from Compton who later became an NF member. But at that time, he was just a regular Mexicano. I think because of there were, like I said, there was a few emeros that got involved, of course, like I said, or MA associates, however you want to call it. But I know all the NF got involved for a fact. Every one of them. You know what I'm saying? So, like you said, Joe, I think it was Joe Boy from the Avenues and Flaco from Artesia and a couple other ones. And Bruiser, Fig. I'm trying to think who the other individual's name was. David Valdez was Knuckles Moreno's brother, believe it or not. You know what I'm saying? Which is another one that we talked about in the past. We're all in that same yard at that time, man. And like I said, man, it was a different area. They were able to coexist. So all this myth that we always had that it was all out war after the shoe war, and no, that's not true at all, man. There was times of peace, but it ended up having certain individuals that just didn't like each other. There were some dudes that were MA members that just didn't like the NF because for whatever reasons, because they were maybe from more rural areas, but that was all bullshit too, man. There was dudes from LA, Compton, and so forth. Maravilla. One of the key dudes, as far as the key NF members, was actually a former MA member, okay, named Louis, I want to say Rojo, I believe. He didn't leave in bad terms. He left in 1961, okay? There was a time there in 1961 where the MA changed their rules to have a blood in, blood out oath, basically. You know what I mean? To have higher expectations and so forth. So he was from Maravilla. He left. He later joined the NF. And he had a lot of influence. He had a lot of influence actually in writing the very, very first constitution for the NF, believe it or not. He also had a key role in, I think it was San Quentin, in trying to form the peace between the NF and MA around 1970, I believe. You know, because a lot of the MLs were locked up, and see what was going on is they were telling the administration that, okay, we're not going to kill each other. We're not going to kill each other. So that was part of the plan too, was that they were already slamming these dudes down after the 68 incident and locking those that they consider high power. So in order for these dudes to come out, they had to some of them agreed to go out there not to take action, but some of them didn't live up to that. Because as soon as they got out there, there's all kinds of rackets, there's all kinds of money. Everything's been established by these groups, and they wanted to infiltrate that. So of course, you know, it all comes down to this. All conflicts come down to control and power in this.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to touch on something real quick that Gunner brought up a few minutes ago, is that he was saying that, you know, people think it's always been war and whatever, and he was relaying how things are going now as far as the end of hostilities. People, you guys got to understand, in order for things to facilitate the way they have been, incident-free for the last however many years since these end of hostilities with all these high-powered dudes ending up on the same yards, they're all eating from the same pie right now, which is the market that's on the yard. You know what I mean? Whether it's cell phones, whether it's substances, whatever it might be, these guys are all sharing the same pie right now. In order for that to happen without violence, there's communication and participation from both groups. So no matter how you look at it, no matter how much it might bother you for whatever reason, you know, you're still on that, you know, gang bang mentality type stuff. These gentlemen are working together at the end of the day, and that's just facts. For those of us who've been there and know it, in order for things to go as smooth as they have, without no major incidents between North and South over, what year did they all start going to the yard together, you guys? What year was it? 13?
15, right?
15. It started being implemented 2013, 2015. They started to hit yards.
So for 7 years, there's been no riots, no melees between North and South. There might have been a skirmish or two here or there. You know what I mean? But on a wide scale, which is very easy to happen with such high-powered people on the yard, and I'll say high-powered people because you see the level of violence nowadays, it's reverting back to what it was before. When they're moving on somebody, it's for keeps, right? So you see the mentality out there. You see these are level 4 yards with very high power, the elite of both respective organizations. And I tip my hat to both of them. Do your thing, gentlemen. Without working together, it would be complete chaos. So everybody's like, no, there's no this, there's no that. Okay, well, maybe nobody's gone out and said, hey, we're homies now. But they are working together 100%.
Yeah,
the only way it's possible.
There's been plenty of times, even prior to the end of hostilities, man. You know, being on yards where there was a mutual respect there, and if we were able to do a bottle for the next group, I mean, it wasn't too far fetched. I mean, it was like, hey, can you? And the same thing goes with, hey, can you shoot this linea down to this guy? You know, what I mean, we need to pass it. The common courtesy is you're gonna make sure that you facilitate that line to that, even though you know these are the enemies. They might be passing a pedazo or a huila saying they hit you. You still will help them And that's just part of being a vecino and part of having that mutual respect. Same thing goes for the shoe, where it was the stand down policy. You know, I mean, there's certain aspects and certain things that have happened. And I hate to say the word North and South, because North and South are soldados, man. I'm talking about the organizations where they will have to facilitate some type of hand in hand working together to make their day go. You know what I mean? If I'm in a cell, Flaco's at the end of the cell, you're at the end of the cell, you're the llavero basically for, you know, the black commander. We need to get something to you, but there's 6 Southsiders in between us. They're going to assist us in getting that to you. That's just common courtesy.
Well,
that's prison. That's what it is, man. You know?
Okay, in Corcoran, right, in the shoe, the last time I went there, we had an agreement with the MA and AB, believe it or not. The BGF were not a part of it because there was a particular BGF member that had disrespected Carnal Chilo from Sanjo. And based upon him disrespecting him, there was a green light put on him if we ever got a chance at him. And so the Africanos, which weren't that many in the shoe, there's not that many in the validated blocks. They would not get on any of our grievances or agreements based upon that. So the agreement that we had was anytime a new arrival came, we would let each other know if the person was good or in bad standings. And if they were in bad standings, whether they were white, a sureño, or norteño, we were to engage if our door popped open. They were to engage. So we were already implementing some type of agreement at that time to take out any trash that came into the pods at that time. So it was kind of interesting. And then whenever there was issues, we would have diplomatic relationships. Instead of us putting a green light on the whole group, we would take it out on individuals. So if there was an issue, I've talked about this before, but a Sureño ended up getting the homies canteen. Angel Chavez, AC from Visa. And he ended up fucking locking up fucking like 2 weeks later with all the dope and shit. Anyways.
That's gonna happen.
Wait, he went out to court, bro. To Tulare County Court, right? And he fucking got all this shit that was supposed to go to silver, right? All kinds of fucking plugs, bro. He came back from court, fucking locked it up, bro. Serio pedo, no bullshit, bro. Anyways,
on his mattress and had it his way.
Man, he fucking.
Hey, he was in there like, bro.
And he was on lockup. He's a dude on lockup talking about, oh, my best friend's an NLR member.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, motherfucker DP me with some bullshit one time. Anyways, I won't forget that. Anyway, so that was the agreement though. So he ended up getting his fucking canteen. So they ended up dialoguing back and forth. And I even seen the kite. They showed us the kite of his response that he shot to the camarada that was running the block with shotgun from 18th Street. Jacko was the Emeto that was running everything there. So ends up shooting the kite saying it's not my fault, it's the cop's fault. You know what I'm saying? Oh well, you're burnt for your shit. Because they weren't going to give homeboy the shit at that time. You know what I'm saying? So he was holding to it, so we had a green light on him. But then we rescinded the green light based upon the fact that homeboy ended up getting his canteen. I was like, fuck it, we should have kept the green light on in many ways, just for the disrespect that he wasn't going to give it up based upon all the factors. Homeboy was like, hey, you know, you need something,
If I would have got one of their canteens, bro, you know what I would have said? Hey, CO, this belongs to that gentleman over there. You know,
you got to be.
It's very easy.
That's how I was brought up, though. You know, to respect everybody until otherwise, you know, necessary. Hey, and you know what? One of you guys made a point. I don't remember if it was Flaco or Gunner, but with all these movements that are coming up here real soon, where they're going to try to reintegrate a lot of the 50-50 guys, a lot of the other security threat groups, whatever they call those guys, such as the Bulldogs, the New Flowers, the Riders that don't have SNY Chronos. I guarantee you this. The NF, the MA, the White Boys will all join forces on those active yards in order to keep them people off those yards. They're going to work together.
Okay,
just like if they try to take GP people to an SNY yard, all the real motherfuckers on them SNY yards, because there is real motherfuckers out there too that don't politic for whatever reason that ain't weird. We're not going to lie and pretend like there's not. Just like we're not going to sugarcoat it that there ain't some suckers in GP, because there is. But all the real ones from either side of the fence, they're going to have to come together, man, because it will be brutal in some certain situations if CDC decides to play their cards in a funny manner and they decide we're going to bring a whole bus load of New Flowers and Bulldogs to this level 4 yard at damn Salinas Valley. It's going to crack. And the
So
same thing can be said the other way, bro.
here's the
So
question, right?
they're gonna work together.
The Bulldogs, Flowers, they're right there together, right? You
Yeah.
got nortenos, surenos, and white boys on this side. You got SNY on this side. Who do you take off on first?
Well, they're going to take out the whoever
You
poses
got
the
to go
biggest
for the
threat.
Bulldogs
You
and
got
the
to go
Flowers
after the
because they're a
Bulldogs and the
threat.
Flowers because they pose the biggest threat. They pose the biggest threat because they're not conforming to nothing the administration has to say, and they've been doing it for several decades.
Okay.
So those are your biggest adversaries because they pose the biggest threat, meaning that they're willing to do with it.
The next question, right? People forget. It's a statement first with the question. People forget that all those dudes that are on the SNY yard, a lot of them are right there active on the main line back in the 80s and 90s as well, 2000s and so forth. The biggest mistake anybody will make is to miscalculate, misjudge. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like the Soldados you have more along the lines nowadays are a lot more younger and not as laced up as before. You have a lot more like young kids between the ages of 18 and 25 that haven't experienced no real get-up. Their schooling is still new. It's still fresh. Do you think that's going to have a big role on these main lines?
I think a lot of people are going to roll it up. I think this is the big misconception here. People think, okay, the youngsters ain't with it. They're definitely with it.
They're with it.
They're with it on a different level. They're definitely with it. Respects to them youngsters. They're with the business. Now, on the same token, there's a lot of youngsters that are locking it up because they're scared. They've never been around and they're going to these yards. And there's a lot of youngsters that are going to these active yards and maintaining, okay? It's a different era. People automatically assume, oh, they're all youngsters, punks over there on S&Y. No, there's a lot of people that have been down 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of guys that were through a lot of the melees and a lot of the foundation, a lot of planting flags in different institutions, different prisons. So there's guys that know what's up. It's a mix of everything.
They got that man strength. There's a difference between being 30 and 20 in the joint. They got that man strength, that experience, and so forth. Man strength is totally different than being young and agile.
That experience of how to make a pedazo, how to secure one, how to get it out to that, facilitate getting it out to that yard. There's not a lot of people that know how to get a pedazo out to the yard. They're told one ways, but there's so many different ways to skin a cat. You know what I mean?
You're right.
You know, for the most part, you're going to get it. Yeah, and I'm not trying to put out their business how they do it, but let's just say that the pieces, you don't necessarily have to carry one out there to be the one out there for you. You know what I mean? So there's different ways to do things, and an old school convict who's been around, who's been through guerra already, knows how to do that. Whereas someone that doesn't matter if he's active or non-active, might not be aware of that and might come to the party not ready. You know, and if he comes not ready on a prison yard, he's going to you better get ready fast, because believe me, there's a lot of people on all sides that are ready. They go out there ready to party, you know. And it's so we're going to see how that plays out. But again, the moral to that story is, will the two organizations work hand in hand to come to some type of agreement to push their agendas? And the statement is that I'm going to make is absolutely. I don't see no other way, you know. And it's not the first time it's happened, just like the story that Flaco told, and I don't believe it's the last time, man. At the end of the day, man, it's all about money. It's all about being able to go out on that yard and program. And they're going to do that by any means necessary. If it means working hand in hand with the adversary, then so be it. But at the end of the day, man, everyone's still about their business, and every agenda is different. But there's a common goal here. The common goal now is to maintain these yards and keep them trash free. Whereas the S&Y side, their agenda is going to be to go wherever administration puts them and live, you know, survive.
Now, I heard someone just got out. I'll let Rojo and you elaborate on this. I heard someone got out from a very active yard, and their implementation is this: we will let the Bulldogs hit the yard and see if we can coexist with them. I've heard that. Have you guys heard anything like that?
I've heard the same thing, but is that actual factual? I can't say, but it's not a bad idea in theory, in my opinion. You know, they've earned their spot in the system, bro. They've held it down. They've done their deal. Could you coexist with them? I don't see why not. Let them do their thing. Just like the North and the South, the big homies from both sides right now, they're coexisting with, you know, a 40, 50-year adversary. Let the Bulldogs come out there. Let them do their thing. It's in the best interest of everybody for their manpower, the release dates, whoop-de-whoop. You just got to come to some kind of agreement with them. Hey, look, this is what we will and will not tolerate, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, people got to be men and step to the plate and find a common solution, a common ground that they can stand on, where they're not sacrificing their morals, integrity, or agenda on either side. And I don't see no reason why they can't exist, bro. Because in my opinion, and a lot of people won't like this, the Bulldogs earn theirs, bro. They earn their spot at the table.
Yeah.
Can't take that from them.
Here's my take. They're now an adversary for 3 decades, 30 plus years. So they've been around. What says that, like you're saying, what you're hearing, Flaco, is a big homie's putting it out there. We're willing to let them coexist and let them stay here. Who says they want to coexist?
Yeah,
Who says
that's the other thing?
The Bulldogs want to coexist? Who says that they want to even? There's been a lot of bloodshed on both sides, and the way that their group functions is they have no hierarchy. They're very independent. They're a very independent group, meaning every man, from the bottom to the top, every soldado, all manpower of equal standings, and they all. Who is going to speak for them? Of course, they're going to have some OGs that have been around the block that might speak for them, but who says that they're even going to conform to being allowed? See, the way that they rock is you're not going to allow us to do anything. We're going to do what we want to do. That's what set them apart from everyone else. Is no one's going to tell them we're going to allow you to be here. They're going to be there because they're going to fight to be there. So I mean, in theory, it's good, but
I'm going to pose this question to you. So if they have no hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody controls them. So if there are Bulldogs that decide to get to a yard and decide to program, right? We're going to program on this yard. Come on, guys. Maybe another yard they're getting off. They don't play that shit. So could that happen? It's like back in the days. There used to be yards where there was some homeboys that we call them degenerates back then, but they would end up having a working relationship kind of at the time. And some homeboys would go to that yard. If you decide to stay, you'd be deemed. But there was some homeboys that decided to stay. I wonder if that could happen with the Bulldogs, where every yard is going to be different. Okay, over here, we're programming with them. We're getting along. Over here, all I get up. I wonder if that could possibly occur.
Well, isn't that what happens in federal prison right now? You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true.
So what's the difference? When I was in CYA, which tripped me out, when the missive came down for them to separate from us, it was war on the spot. I went to Preston. It was all out war. In fact, we put our war with the Southsiders on the back burner so that way we could pay attention to the Bulldogs. When I got to Carl Holton, we were still working hand in hand and cool with them. 2 separate groups, but we allowed each other to be on the yard together and to kick it. I actually would bust spreads with Bulldogs. Shout out to my boy Cisco Aguilar. This is how it was. So every place was different. And in the feds, they have free will. See, that's the one thing about the Bulldogs is their group has free will. They're allowed to adapt to their surroundings. If they go to a yard, there's a lot of Southsiders. The Southsiders are willing to let them function and program there, and they can work hand in hand. They will in some parts. Some won't. Same thing with nortenos. You know what I mean? As you can tell, like in Allenwood Prison, that's how they do it. Now, on the state, it could possibly be that every yard is going to be different, or they can move as one unit. We will never know until it all pans out. But I think everything's open. Everything's on the table when it comes to them.
I'll tell you what, in the feds, the homies and the Bulldogs have reached an agreement. Hey, you could rock with us, or you could be independent. But either way, there's not no animosity in the feds at this point. There's no reason it can't be like that in the state. But what I will say is, in order for it to be successful long term, the Bulldogs will kind of have to have a little bit better communication within themselves throughout the whole group, like the traditional groups do, in order for it to, because what's going to happen is, say they're cool in Solano, but in Salinas Valley, they're not trying to hear all that stuff and they're just going to war. Well, eventually, the people in Salinas Valley are going to tell the people in Solano, hey, these dudes ain't conforming, and that's going to take it out on them, even though, they're trying to let bygones be bygones, essentially, and just coexist. Because I'll tell you what, it's better for everybody if they do. You know what I mean? One less enemy makes the whole being on GP productive. You know what I mean? You'd be able to focus instead of having to constantly be battling, getting on lockdown, going to the hole, losing money. That's the key thing here. So if they come out and they just coexist, bro. It's a new era, bro. Things are different,
Well,
man. Make your money, bro.
It's
You know?
easy to coexist if you only have 5 of you guys on the yards, but what happens if there's 50, 60 of them? Does that attitude change? So if they get put on yards where there's only 5 or 6 of them, I guarantee you a lot of them are going to say, okay, we'll either coexist or they're going to get off top and get off the yard. But what happens if they're like 5, 10 and they're coexisting? And next thing you know, their numbers get to 30 and 40. Are they going to get froggy? Are they going to want to jump? Those are going to be issues.
Well, and those are issues in life that come up. You know, every group. You know, you'll notice that a lot. Once a group starts to get deeper, they start to feel a little more swag about them, a little bit more, and that's every group, north, south, everybody. You start to, you know, with numbers comes power, man, and or the feeling of power. You know, the feeling of we run this yard, we're deeper. You know, and so that's and that ain't always the case. Sometimes it only takes 4 or 5 real motherfuckers with real steel to clear a yard out. You know, they'll take down your hierarchy, and then it will wither from there. But I don't know. It's just got to play out. Like I said, they're a variable of what's going on right now that no one's thinking about. Everyone's thinking about GP, SNY side, everything. But there is another group, and I even spoke on that in one of my spills on Gunners Collective. There's a other group, which being the Nueva Flor, as well as the Bulldogs, that could possibly play a key role in this war, depending upon which side they lean to. Now, we both know that they consider themselves active, and everyone that's in prison that considers themselves active, automatically, I think their first targets are trash, right?
Yeah, they don't. They're basically nortenos that don't play the politics. Is basically what they are.
Yeah, Nueva Flor is and traditionally that's what I've always been told. That's what we.
But there's SMY. You imagine the SMY New Flowers and the GP New Flowers going at it.
Well, can you imagine the SNY Bulldogs and the GP Bulldogs going at it? You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. There's so many different groups that are involved now, and then you got all these other dropout gangs that have formulated. It's total chaos right now. And then that reverts back to the initial topic that we're talking about, you know, the 2 organizations working hand in hand together. That's a given. They're going to have to, man. That's just going to eliminate that variable right there so they can focus more. And they're smart enough and have been doing this long enough to understand that. You know what I mean? You can't have every single group going at it, man. Then you got to factor in the Africanos, how they're going to play it, because they play an instrumental part too. They're a very large group in prison, as well as the white boys. There's a lot of high-ranking dropout ABs and NLRs that are on the SNYRs that are targets from the AB. It's just going to get ugly. You know what I mean? Definitely.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't think about the Africanos. I mean,
well, yeah. You know, there's a lot of Africanos. I mean, they're a little bit more laxed in you know, if you want to step away, you step away. But there's a lot of people that they've rolled up for having bad paperwork. There's a lot of people that have told or whatever, and they're on the SNY yards or got weird cases that are targets. And a lot of these groups like the Kumis, the Crips, and the Bloods, they're not playing them games either. Oh, they're definitely not playing them games, man. So that's what I'm saying. You have to factor them into the equation. Of course, the AB, the white boys, the Woods, skinheads, they're a very dominant group as well. And there's a lot, and I mean a lot of dropout whites that have been, you know, removed. They removed just like the Mexicans removed, if not even more dangerous. You already know that. I've seen some white boys tear some heads off, right? Allegedly. And so these are targets that maybe have been formed or whatever. I mean, we're gonna see how CDC plays out and what's gonna happen. But what I can say is I know the 2 organizations, for the most part, and anything could happen, I think they'll work hand in hand to eradicate any adversary.
Most definitely.
I would agree. They're all the GP groups will have somewhat of a common understanding about if, and they're going over all the variables right now. You know, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, you know what I mean? If it's Mexicans, we'll take care of it. If it's whites, you guys take care of it. You know, if the numbers aren't right, we'll assist you. You know what I mean? They got to work together, man, because now right now, the way politics stand, it's more of an active versus non-active environment in the prison system, and that's what non-active
they're supposed to put out there are the ones that are basically gang SNYs, from my understanding, right?
None of the people who need to go to GP, they're not going. None of the weirdos, they're not going. They got true SNY Chronos. They're going to be
true SNY Chronos. They're not going to go. You know what I mean? So say like these SNY groups, right? I'm gonna keep it 100, and people may not like this. They're getting off putting in more work on the SNY side than they are on the GP side, because the GP side is more politically restrained, if that makes sense.
It's more structured.
Over there.
It's the Wild West. The
It's Wild West.
the GP side's structured by all groups.
Structure over here.
Whereas the SOY, you don't have to answer to no one. It's Wild Wild West.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So I think that's going to play very, very big factor into this.
But that doesn't mean that the GP side won't get with that ass, because I'm telling you over there, they might be very structured and held back by the restraints of the politics. But their politics do deem that they will not walk yards with trash. So that's the one rule that will change all that. You know, so
it's going to come down to this. This is what I really strongly believe, bro. Which side has true believers in what they believe in? Do these homeboys that are actually on the active side and so forth, do they really believe in the big homies push? Or is their morale already fucking kind of fucked off, like I've heard? There's a lot of homeboys on these yards that just ain't saying shit. They don't agree with a lot of stuff that's going on out there. That's just fucking truth. That's not a good way to go into battle, first and foremost.
I got a question for you guys. Okay, this stuff's been going on for 7 years. These end of hostilities, shared yards, relatively peaceful. You got to think, man, a lot of people in prison have never experienced anything but the end of hostilities environment on these main lines. What happens when it's time for war? How many people do you think are going to fold? Because they've led a peaceful life, except for removing their own trash, and then they're going to see some stuff start popping off. I think we're going to have a lot of man down situations as well.
A lot at least one in every
never come back. And I need to get out of here.
In every 5. At least 1 in every 5, I think, bro. I think that's a fair number, give or take around that range.
Okay, well here's something that goes into that, Flaco, and I think it's funny. You're right, Ro. There will be a lot of people rolling up. But where are you going to go? They're just going to send your ass right back to a main line. Only you're on the other side now. You know what I mean? You're not really getting away. This is something that nobody can escape unless you have a true SNY chrono. There is nothing you can escape. And the only way to develop a true SNY chrono is to, 1, either be a weirdo and tell on several people, or 2, right, get removed due to violence. You know what I mean? Then you got a true 812, a true 1030, or whatever it is called. Other than that, they'll just be placed from one yard to the next and have to go through it. So,
or they're going to fill up them shoes. They're going to fill up the security housing unit like they want to.
Oh, those are definitely going to be filled up. Those are definitely going to be filled up. That's right up the top.
We got somewhere for you. Okay, we can't house you. Okay, you're going to be back in the ADSEG in the shoe where they make $20,000 more, I believe, per inmate when they're housed in security housing units.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what it's all about. It's all about money on every front.
Everything, man. So that's where they may be able to possibly put them. They house them there, hold them there for like 9 months a year. Okay, we got to find you housing. And they send you right back to the same fucking situation, man.
Only they're on the other side now. Now they're targeted by just the opposite side, the same guys that they were rocking with. It's just going to be a repeat cycle until eventually 1 or 2 things happens. Either, people on the streets are able to get Congress to pass some type of bill, or the judicial branch to pass some type of bill deeming it fucking, inhumanitarian. You know what I mean? To be basically setting these people up to be murdered, or 2, man, they're actually able to administration push their agenda, and what they're going to basically do is have programming yards and non-programming yards. And these non-programming yards are going to be very dangerous for years to come, and these programming yards are going to be what they are: a bunch of people.
Well, for about a year, within a year, you may start to see within a year, because these lockdowns are they lock you down forever too, though. Eventually, within I'll say 2 to 3 years, you'll start having yards that are established, whether they're established active or inactive. That's what you're going to have.
Well, yeah, and we'll see.
Or they're going to pull it. But yeah, I think the people need to. I don't think anybody wants to see this happen, to be honest with you.
No,
you know what I'm saying. So I mean,
except for the people fucking wanting to get that extra money.
Yeah, so I think it's up to families and so forth to push your agenda, man. Be an advocate for your loved one. If that's what you believe in, if you're against what's going on and you're worried about your family and you're worried about this, then be an advocate for it.
Be a voice. Make your voice. We talked about it, me, you, and Toko the other day, and I said, man, one of the things to do would maybe institute a statewide mandate, between all groups, whether it be active, non-active, facilitate some type of messages between each other, where you could be like, look, we're going to go on a hunger strike, or you can't do a sit down because, again, the actives got to make every line movement, so they can't do that, unless they're told they can do that. But maybe a hunger strike or something statewide, and then maybe, you know, start bringing some awareness to it, because anything besides that, man, the administration is going to place you where they want. They'll come snatch you up in the middle of the night, throw a blindfold on you, and take you to a yard and just release you. That's what they've been known to do. They'll do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's just it. You're going to move. You're going to get off the bus. You're going to go where they send you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
All they gotta do is look at you and know you're not supposed to be there either, and that's the messed up part. They know they're not supposed to send you there.
Go back to your teachings, whether you're active or inactive. Whether you're active or inactive, what have you been taught your whole career behind the walls? Who is your number one enemy?
The canine.
Administration.
The administration.
Yeah, the canine.
That's, you know what I mean? That's what needs to be dealt with, man.
And that's how it is. That's the number one teaching, at least on our side, and I'm sure on every side. That's why we don't fraternize with the canine. That's why we wouldn't do over familiarity. How do you say that shit? I said it right. That's how you do it. You don't get over too familiar with them, because at the end of the day, they're the number one adversary.
Now they do though. That's the crazy part.
And you don't, and that's it.
Now they do though. You got them going there talking to IGI, sitting there having coffee and shit. Yeah, the yard's going fucking good nowadays. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, but guess it's about to go bad. And those same people that you were over there talking to, having coffee with, are the reason why it's going bad, because they're going to put you in that predicament. So who's your friend and who's not your friend? It's time for everybody, as the raza, Africanos, the white boys, everybody, to come together to oppose the oppression of the people. Now who's really going to get oppressed? The incarcerated inmates and convicts are being oppressed by administration. It's time to stand up and do it. It's you're gonna have to grit your teeth and maybe put yourself in some situations you wouldn't necessarily want to be in, but such is life in prison, man. Things are changing. You got to adapt to the times.
Most definitely. Anyways, I think that's about it for today. What do you think, Rojo?
I agree, man. I think we covered it real well. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the administration creating this. They know what's up. They know where people can and can't go. They know. There's so many debriefing reports. They're way more aware of it than they let on. Oh, well, let's see if this works out. It's not going to work out.
They're going to pick and choose who they want to place on these yards.
Yep.
You know, they're going to take high priority targets and place them on these yards, man. And that's just what it is. They know who told what and what said who and who had status at one point in time.
Who's on what and how and why.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I think that high profile, like say like what's his name, Rodney Shelton. You know what I mean? Or Flaco from Santa Rosa, they're not going to put them out there on the mainland. They're going to stay safe in Mill Creek.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not initially, but I mean, you never know, man. You never know. You never know if their whole agenda. Their whole agenda is this. Their whole agenda is to get the big homies back in the shoe. But
you know who they're going to protect though. You know who they're going to protect though is the people that like to touch people they're not supposed to fucking touch.
Yeah, they will.
Davis and them cats. They're protected. Oh yeah, they're right. They've always been protected. You know, so
damn shame.
It's a horrible shame. They should just throw all them out on the yard and see what happens. Just like the fucking yard on fire. You know what I mean?
I'll reactivate.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You know what I mean?
Anyway, YouTube, this is Big Flaco, Convicts Perspective, Gunners Collective. Your boy Rojo, ACP, in the building. We hope you guys enjoyed this. Any of you guys on the streets, in the prison, let us know what you think about what we were talking about, man. Let us know your opinion, because your opinion matters as well. We don't know everything. We're just giving it the best we can give you. Once again, y'all enjoy your Monday. Appreciate your time, and we're out of here.